Whew! Finally getting some good snow out here in Washington. Let's get on with today's video. So, if you haven't seen already, Polaris teased a couple photos, well, at least a couple photos floating around the internet, the interwebs, of the 2022 Polaris mountain sleds. Let's face it, it was inevitable. Polaris had to answer to Skidoo's last year mid-season drop of their turbo mountain sled. And well, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting a Polaris Turbo RMK. Finally! So if you're still in the dark about the release of Polaris's 2022 sleds, last summer there was an article put out by snowmobile.com that went into a little bit more detail about several patents that Polaris had filed for a turbo two-stroke engine. There's also been plenty of rumors floating around the internet for months now leading up to this. Obviously, Polaris is not the first to do this, as Skidoo released their 2020 mid-season Turbo Summit last year. And while yes, the Skidoo Summit Turbo has been a pretty big success, in my mind, Polaris is to Apple as Skidoo is to Android. And what I mean by that is that Apple wasn't the first to put out a smartphone, but they definitely set the precedent and improved on many ideas and technologies that were already on the market, which to me is the same thing that Polaris is doing with their new Turbo RMK. Now, obviously that's just my opinion and my take on it, so take it with a grain of salt. But let me know what you think in the comments below. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty and see if we can't guess what else Polaris will release alongside the 2022 sleds. Now, let me be honest here. This is just speculation because we are just a few days out from their actual drop on the 1st of March. But based off of what I found floating around the interwebs and doing a little bit of digging online elsewhere, here's a list of a few things I think Polaris will come out with for the 2022 sleds in addition to the Turbo. Now let me preface this by saying I don't have any connections to Polaris. I'm not an ambassador, I'm not an athlete. I do not have any inside information, and Polaris has not told me anything about the new 2022 sleds, nor has any dealership. So whether or not I'm right, we'll see in just a couple days. Number one is the turbo itself, obviously. It's been a long time coming, and frankly, like I said in the beginning, it was inevitable with the way that the industry is heading and the direction that it's going. I had heard talks a couple years ago about Polaris working with aftermarket turbo manufacturers in order to develop a new turbo system for their own sleds, and well, here we are. Now, I'm not going to go into detail on what I think, how much power I think it'll have, how much PSI the turbo will be pushing or anything like that, or any details like that to do with the turbo or the system or anything. If you want to see all the patents and everything that Polaris had put through, I'll leave a link in the description for that snowmobile.com article. As well as I'll make an additional video here in a couple days when the actual 2022 sleds drop and detail out everything that's in the new sled. Number two, a new chassis. Most likely it'll be the new Matryx chassis coming over from the trail lineup that was released last year, or it could be slightly different, which follows what Polaris has done for the past couple of years with each new generation, like the Pro and Axis chassis, since those also had a trail sled the year prior to the new mountain chassis coming out, following a few improvements to that chassis. So what I've heard about this new chassis is that it does slightly change the rider position and that it brings you slightly forward compared to the Axis chassis, along with, of course, new body panels, headlights, new dash, stuff like that. Speaking of dash, I have a feeling number three is going to be a new dash setup from Polaris that comes over from the trail and side-by-side market. This would also kind of be in line with what Polaris has done in the past with previous generations and come out with new gauge and dash setups with a new generation of chassis. Both the current gauges that Polaris has on their sleds work great. I have the lower end model gauge on my current sled because I had the upgraded gauge on my previous 17 sled, and to me the biggest benefit to that one was the navigation setup. But with all the new technologies and everything that we have, both with phones, if you have service, or a Garmin InReach setup, I didn't really feel like I absolutely had to have that gauge. So depending on what the new features of the new gauge is, I may give it a try with this new 22 sled, but we'll just have to see what happens. And number four, a damn tether. Like, good Lord, Polaris, Skidoo has had one for years on their sleds. Please, this year, finally, give us a tether. Now, they did have a new tether design as an accessory this year with the addition of a magnetic tether that has been popular in the aftermarket world recently. So we'll see if they actually add that to the new sleds or not. Number five is new shock packages. Well, maybe. Or they'll stick with the same shocks they currently have on the Chaos and then develop better shocks later on like they have in the past. Number six, 6 is a shortened tunnel, baby. Let's go. Short tunnels have been a big thing over the past couple of years, thanks to the most well-known Polaris sponsored athlete, Chris Burandt. He's been cutting his tunnels for a few years now, with plenty of benefits noted in one of his videos that I'll link right here. So whether or not he was able to convince Polaris to finally do this, I think it'll definitely be a welcome addition among backcountry riders. Now, I did manage to find someone that actually converted a Matryx trail sled into an RMK variant, and well, it looks pretty good. And honestly, very close to what I would think that the new RMK sleds would look like. Now, that someone was Anchorage Yamaha Polaris out of Alaska. Now, the changes include a 155 by 2.6 Polaris track, the RMK gearing, low elevation clutching, Avid drivers, Ice Age Bomber rails, OFT Racing two-wheel axle kit and billet wheels. They switched over the RMK React front end, some Walker Evans reservoir front shocks, the gripper skis from the mountain sled, an RMK sway bar, as well as a DuraPro tether. They said it's very fun to ride and has a new rider position that's amazing, and unsurprisingly, it does very well in the mountains. So, as you can tell, it's absolutely nuking here in Washington now, finally, end of February. So I got some riding to do. Needless to say, I'm pretty excited about the new 2022 sleds coming out. I think the biggest thing that I'm ready for is that factory turbo, having that extra power and not having to worry about whether or not your warranty is going to be intact or not. So let me know what you think Polaris should change for the 2022 sleds. I want to thank you for watching. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload my next video, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.